But if you bought in at a dollar when it was a dollar and it's never at a dollar after that, I mean, it's going to be different. Commissions would eat you sliver. Well, uh, that depends on how you trade and where you're trading at. Because if you are doing commissions with brokers and stuff to that effect, then they'll just eat you up. If you were dealing with some of those trading apps that have a large quantity of fees with the buying and selling, they would eat you up. But if you're doing ETF trading, where you're buying the valuation of the shares, which is always an option. When you do that, you throw up a stack of cash towards the value of a certain quantity of stocks. You get whatever you're going to get off of that, and then you sell it. Now, if you were to um, deal with certain like Stash app and you do the trade, once you get rid of it, it puts what you want back into your pocket, and then keep what you don't want on the stock, and then you're still good. And it doesn't charge you per transaction. It's a flat rate. When you have a flat rate trading platform, because fintech gives you options for flat rate trading platforms, and when you have a flat rate trading platform, you don't have to worry about how, the commission fees and everything like that. You only have to worry about taxation on everything that you sold up front or at the end fees. No, so when you're dealing with, like I told you, with Stash App and other ETF style fintech style apps where they charge you like $3 a month to trade unlimited, then you're in a situation where you can buy the value of TikTok and then trade, and you don't have to worry about that. Now, that's actually a smart move too, because we talked about that on our show, what, 3 weeks ago, that instead of selling the stock and losing your position, that you could leverage the value of the stock. So that's actually an even better position to have, because instead of having to deal with the taxation of selling the stocks to get 90 grand, you actually could leverage the 100 grand worth of stocks for the 1,000 stocks and give you enough money to go and buy another $100,000 worth of stocks, or well, they'll give you 71%. So you'll be able to buy 71% more stocks. So that would still give you the ability to double down or take the cash and put it towards other platform, not platform, but other dividend paying stocks that would allow you to pay towards the leverage capital, which would allow you to double your platform, your portfolio a whole lot faster. And that's one way to get into it. I think that's a fantastic idea. Enough money to buy a duplex. Well, I mean, if you're trying to go into real estate, that's one way to do it. But you also have to understand that that um when we're focus driven on building a portfolio that's going to generate revenue, once you reach the goal of the quantity of output that you want your portfolio to pay out, that's when you stop focusing so much on growing your stock portfolio and start focusing more on expanding your assets. And that's going to be the portion of when you tiptoe on over to um, real estate, gold, silver, and other stuff that where you're buying billiards instead of just the stock value of it or the ETF value of it. When you start doing international trading and start going overseas and stuff to that effect. So there's a lot of things in a lot of places that you can go and get stuff done. But it depends on what your goals are, and setting up those 20-year goals. You have to, just like we were talking about with the other shows, focus more on um, where you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years, and then put that towards your investment strategies. So when you expand on your stock portfolio till you get the 15, 20 stocks that you want to have, once you're satisfied with that, then you transition over to other things, because you might want to have a 15, 20 stock portfolio, but then you also might want to have some Bitcoin. Then you might want to also have real estate, get you some assets, so that you can leverage physical assets against the taxation of the dividends. You might want to then turn around and again, like I said, start doing some other stuff overseas, invest in big things. There's a lot of stuff that's going to go on with diversity, but you start by throwing your money somewhere and then spreading it out. The same way when you slap the cards on the table and spread them out, you gotta first you gotta put them down, and then you gotta spread it out. That's how diversification works. But that's a fantastic thing, and I wanted to touch base on that before we got started on today's topic. Remember that we have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we're going to be talking about how to make money. So Monday, I got a pretty good lineup for you because we're going to be talking about how they're getting rid of the government giving you checks and forcing you to do electronic transactions with the government. So all of the taxation that you do and all of the tax returns and funds that you get from the government, whether it be Social Security or VA benefits or whatever, all going to be direct deposits or automatic transfers. So we're going to be talking about that. We're also talking about the uh, the war thing. They what they call that the not the defense bill, the war bill. They're changing the name back to war from defense. So we're going to be talking about that, and then there was another topic that we're going to be talking about on Monday. So we got three different topics that we're going to be covering, and it's going to be pretty lengthy. So we're going to be able to cover a lot of stuff, which will give you guys a lot of insight that'll help you guys with your position on how you um, make, save, and invest your money. And then Tuesday we're going to be talking about. I'm going to be digging into a way to see if we can make some money with very little effort and hopefully little to no investment capital to try to make ourselves some side cash so that we can have more money to profit. And what I was thinking about doing was researching some of those investment opportunities that we talked about last week and the week before about investing in certain projects that is underfunded or investing in uh, legal cases and stuff to that effect, where clients that don't have enough money to pay for the startup, but they have a case that's worth winning kind of situation where you can get a percentage of the proceeds. So we're probably going to be trying to cover those things because those things, alongside tax liens, where you put up cash towards individuals, um, property taxes, which allows you to put a lien on the property and then work out a contract that could put a decent quantity of money back into your pocket and then some. Like all of these ways are ways where you have less actual footwork, probably more cold calls, but less actual footwork, and then you would be able to just put a little stack of cash down to cover a certain situation, and then recoup the profits from that particular deal over a period of time. And it really depends on the size of the money that you're putting up and the timeline of the deal, which determines how beneficial it is to you. But we're going to be talking about those because we feel like, out there trying to put in 8 hours a day after working an 8 hour a day job, we think that's just a little bit too much work. And trying to be a masculine man, which is what we're going to be talking about today, it is hard for us to identify ourselves as the go getter when we're burnt out and we don't have any more energy to get out there and go get it. Michael says third party, which means we will end up paying a user fee for the service. More money pulled from your wallet. Oh, yeah. Damn right. Yeah, now we're going to be covering all of that stuff. And then people that are low income, people that are on fixed income, that's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be happening. And we don't have much that we can do about it because it's mandatory. He said in March that this was something that needed to be put into action by September 30th, and September 30th is a few weeks away. So, got to cover the topic. I'm going to cover the topic so that you guys know the ins and outs of it. Each state is different as to the percentage of interest. Uh, can be up to 25% paid to you. Well, that depends on how you do it. Because if you go through the government on the tax liens, it's going to be between 18 and 25%. If you pay the government for them, and then it'll be the interest paid back to you when they pay the government. Now, that's a slippery slope because if the government's got 10 years to cash in on your money. If they don't, then the debt can't be collected. If they foreclose on the property in a reasonable period of time, and upon foreclosure, when they put the house up for sale and somebody buys it, you get your cut with interest. Or if the person doesn't want to lose their property, they pay the debt with interest, which is their late fee, and that is what puts the money back into your pocket. Now, if they default on the property, you and everybody else who paid the taxes for them over the years are all battling over first rights to the property. The person who most recently paid has first rights on the property. That person has to buy out everybody else that has a lien on the property in order for the property to be in the possession of the person who wins succession over the property. Now the issue is with that is that you have to have enough money to buy out everybody else. Now, if you reach out to the property owner and you draft a person to person contract with them where you will cover their total back taxes on the property and maybe a little bit more just to give them some room to work things out and schedule out a payment plan and whatever interest rates that you would like to throw down on top of that situation, they would be directly paying you, not the government, for the property where you would then be doing what you got to do to put a lien on the property for the amount of money that they owe and this, that, and the third. Because if they default on their contract with you, you can still foreclose on the property. But by going directly to the source of the property ownership, you don't have to go through the government to get your money. Now, the difference between the two is you could actually do a business like that where you're saving people that are at risk from losing their homes based on their inability to pay their taxes. You can save legacies where families who didn't know that their parents' house had taxation on it and they don't want to lose their house, stuff to that effect. You can hold these people down. Yeah, like you're saying, Washington State 3 years before you get notified, but that's 3 years before you get notified. So for 3 years, somebody's paying for the house and then you get notified. But they have 10 years to collect. And it's not 10 years from the last date, it's 10 years from the first date. So if you're 3 years behind, they've got 7 years to collect on first person who paid. See what I'm saying? So that's a big difference. And you have the difference between tax lien states and tax deed states because tax deed states are states that you can actually seize the house if they don't pay versus tax lien states where they only allow you to seize the house. Well, they only allow you to get the taxation on the house, and then you end up losing the money on the taxation if the government doesn't collect. But if you have a direct contract with the house and you put a lien on the house for the contract, even in a tax lien state, because you have a person to person loan is almost equivalent to a mortgage, where if in the event that they don't pay, you can foreclose on the house for the amount of money that they owe you, plus cost of court, because that's breach of contract. And the house was used as collateral in the deal. And up to 28 days before it goes to auction. But and then again, you're still going to get your money out of it. So these are ways where you can start putting money in places where instead of you going to the auction and being the one fighting for the house to the highest bidder, you're one of the ones that's getting reimbursed off of whoever gets the house to the highest bidder. And that's a fantastic way to get in. So, we're going to be talking about that stuff coming soon. So I figured that'd be a good topic for Tuesday. And we're going to see what we can do about chopping it up with our masculine topic for today because we got a lot going on. I did not think that it was going to be this much, but it's pretty good. It's going to be a couple hours, almost like yesterday. And we reasonably started 10 minutes late, so we're on point. Now, as for today's topic, we have to understand. Oh no, 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 no! It's fine. We could talk about. I don't care what we talk here on this and that, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. We talk about a lot of different topics during the show. And I was talking about money, investment, and finance. And as soon as I started talking about money, investment, and finance, you keyed in with some knowledge that you have about money, investing, and finance, which is perfectly fine. Um, and I was just giving you guys a heads up as because Monday is up there, Tuesday is not up there yet, Wednesday is going to be up there later today, Sunday. And then Thursday through Saturday is already up there. So you can hit the notification button on most of the shows for the upcoming 7 days. And I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that Monday and Tuesday was going to be up there, and it is worth watching, in my opinion. Every show that I put up is worth watching, but it's more to the tune of worth watching because it is information that you may not have seen. Because if you weren't here 6 months ago when I covered some of these things, you might want to join it now when I cover it with an update this week. That's why I was mentioning it, so there's no problem. He said, no, 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 I know my boundaries. I don't do boundaries. I have non-negotiable expectations for behavior, and you are behaving as I expect. So there are no problems. That is why you are the moderator of the comment section, because I trust your judgment and I believe that you will not do or overstep in ways that will frustrate the podcast or compromise the community guidelines. Because I push the envelope. I do push the envelope. However, it is what it is. I just don't want the envelope to be pushed too far, because if I get canceled because of something I said, I take full responsibility. But if I get canceled because of something somebody else says, I'm gonna feel like a dumbass because I should have done something about that. That's the only dynamic that I have about that. Beyond that, we're good. We're good. But we do have a war going on for the soul of the modern men, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. On one side, you have that traditional man that we've been talking about all week, stoic, strong, and the unwavering provider as expected by society. But on the other hand, the man in love, when we turn into something completely different, where there's the vulnerability, emotional openness, and connectedness that we would normally have that not a lot of people get. You say you're not going to get canceled. You might be right, because for some reason I'm blowing up. In special shout out to Bangladesh. I really got to do this again. Special shout. Oh, they're scrolling across the bottom of the screen anyway. Special shout out to Bangladesh, because for some reason they are like almost 100,000 views a month, going strong for the little bitty behind podcast. They're watching the bejesus out of us over there in Bangladesh, Rwanda, India. Special shout out to them. Russia. They really watch it. I'm getting more views outside of America than I'm getting in America. It is fantastic. So I doubt that I'm gonna get canceled as long as I don't get full of myself. What do you said? How many people? How many people watch it? Well, s is that esting, etching, etching? How many people were supposed to be watching? Like I said, we got over 100,000, which is twice the number of people that are subscribed to the channel, which is good. And that's from overseas. That's not from America. We got like 30,000 from America. But from, I was like, is that normal? You see how many people on right now? Okay, so you are not seeing the exact number of people that are on the show. And one of the reasons why is because YouTube has changed its algorithm 4 times already. We have a specific number of individuals that are lingering on the show that are going to be counted. And then we have the individuals that are not counted because they are watching, but an ad took them out of the show. And when they came back, they're not counted a second time. Then you have the individuals on, then you have the individuals that come and leave. The ones that, well, once they've been counted, they've been counted. So to get a more accurate view count, there are more than 4 individuals that are watching the show, but then you also have Twitch and Twitter that are also watching the show. That is not counted there either. So we have a pretty decent quantity of individuals that are watching us, and it's a pretty steep scenario. So I'm on a different platform. Oh yeah, that's true. See you educated. Well, yeah, and that was one of the things I was talking about, because the podcast that asked me if I wanted to be on a show, they thought I was a different podcast. They were looking for other women to chime in, and then when they found out that I was a dude, they might have was gonna get me on there, but then when because I'm educated, and because I talk about business, finance, and everything else, maybe my 1 by 1 in the 16 by 9 and all this other stuff that's got going on. They're like, we're gonna have to wait until you change up your format before we have you on our show. I'm like, shit, yeah, I ain't gotta go to your show, but your whole team can come to my show, because I can fit 10 people in this 9 by 16, because I can do fucking 8 cubes in this bad boy. I'm telling you, bro, I can fit your whole channel up here. I ain't got to go to y'all. Y'all can come to me, and we can have a debate over here. We can take it to the streets, guys versus girls. We can take it to the streets. Open challenge. Because I had Sarah come on, very educated woman back in June. We've had All Star Izzy come to the show. I actually have to do him a respect and dive into his channel one week. Actually, I'm gonna touch base with him and see if I can pop in on his show this week because I owe him the respect of going to his show because he came to mine, and then I want to see what's going on, and then we're gonna work things out because I like doing cross brand shit, but I just feel like when it was like, hey, you know you weren't our first choice, but then when we thought that you were, but we're gonna keep the door open. I'm like, nah, you started something. I challenge you. Open challenge. Every podcast is talking about the same topics that I'm talking about. I'm like, bring your behind here. So you already know I'm gonna try to go get because I talked about Darwin Feeds when he was the one who had covered for Passport Bros. He was the one that was covering the conditional visa for the women. I was talking. I talked about his comments on the show, and I did debunk it on Monday. And now I'm like, hold up, I can't just talk about his content and not get him on the show. So I'm gonna try to get him on the show. I, I ain't got no chill when it calls when you're doing call-ins. Well. So here's the thing here on this and that what I decided to do, and I think it's the most effective thing. But it really requires folks to have uh confidence because what I do is I throw this comment section, this link into the comments, and when I throw that link into the comments, if in the event that they have did what they had to do and they want to dive onto the show, they click the link, approve the mic, approve the camera. It brings them into my green room. I see them in my green room. Know they're over the age of 18. I put them up on the screen. I can see them. I can hear them. We can talk in real time. They can turn their camera off if they don't want to be seen, but I can hear what they have to say and we can have a educated conversation in real time. And I can draw about 7 or 8 fans straight out of the comment section right up onto the screen and we can all have a group conversation. And not too many people got the courage to dive in on that particular type of dynamic. But like I said, I told this other podcast, it got like 3 or 4 women on this other podcast. I'm like, you can bring your whole group over here. I'm talking about like the people on the front end, the cameraman, the soundboard person. You can bring your whole team up here, and then we can have a debate, and I can promote your podcast at the same time. I don't give a fuck because I could use some female perspectives when I'm talking about the gender dynamics from a male's perspective. And we are right now, special shout out to the ladies because we are now 65% male driven podcast from the male's perspective. So that means that we've got a larger quantity of females watching the show, about 40%, 45%, starting to get up there. Michael said it would be interesting to do a live phone chat. It would be interesting to do a live phone chat. He said, "I'll make you great again." The mega podcast. The mega podcast. You got to understand, I am not ashamed about how I do what I do. And I strongly encourage for everyone else to keep doing the same. You come here, you want to learn something. You come here, you want to learn something. This is a channel where you have educated men talking about better ways to improve ourselves and improve our lives. And it includes the women. The ladies can learn from this stuff because this stuff isn't gender exclusive. The same way that men do things and fuck up their objectives is the same way women do the same. The same way men are not guided by the right goals is the same way women do the same. They have different expectations, but their intent is similar. They want to selfishly obtain, and both sides forget about the other person for different reasons. So it's like, hey, either I'm going to be drawing folks up here onto the show that's going to be joining in on these topics about business and finance and investing, or I'm going to be drawing folks onto the show when we start talking about gender dynamics and racial bias, or not racial bias, but gender bias, because I don't really care about it. I've already told somebody before because they're like, oh yeah, this country's racist, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, no, bro. Actually, truth be told, is that Racism is only kept alive by the less educated individuals because, truth be told, in today's modern society, the country is driven by social classism, meaning that they're going to treat you like garbage, but they're not going to treat you like garbage because you got a good tan. They're going to treat you like garbage because you're broke. They're going to treat you like a statistic because you're part of the poor class, because you cannot afford a lawyer to sue, because you cannot afford to pay for accommodations, because you cannot afford for better treatment, because you got to pay the cost to be the boss. You have to pay for the luxury of being mutually respected a lot of times. And people are not going to agree with that. Some people are going to say, no, you're going to be respected because you're going to be respected. You're going to be respected in two situations. One, when you buy the respect, and two, when you threaten people for the respect. Because the third one, admiration, people respect you when you make sacrifices, sacrifice yourself for the people around you, which means you have less and you're doing more. And people will respect you because you're the only person willing to sacrifice yourself for the cause. But if you're not sacrificing yourself, there's only two ways that you're going to obtain it. People are going to fear you and they're going to respect you because they're afraid to not respect you, or you're going to buy their respect. Billionaires don't use fear, billionaires use desperation. They buy your respect. If you're desperate enough, if you need the money and I can afford to give it to you, I can buy you and have you do whatever I want you to do within reason. The more desperate you are, the more compromisable you are. That's the dynamic of things. So when we start coming from a billionaire mindset, and then we start talking about relationship dynamics from a billionaire mindset, from a man's perspective, that's when the whole dynamic changes. So, like I said, I left those ladies an open challenge. If they're interested in sliding in, they'll slide in. If not, it is what it is. They might give me a no, thank you. We really appreciate the offer. It's fine. They might tell me that my podcast starts too late at night. I don't give a. I start after Adult Swim, and the reason why is because these little kids need to take their behind to bed before we start getting onto the main topic. And we're on after Raw because I am not competing with them since Raw went live on YouTube and on um Netflix. I ain't trying to compete with them, so I go live after Raw. In the news, people start watching the news when I go live. So everybody, unless Donald Trump is doing a late night live presentation, I shouldn't have any problems. Like I said, I look broke, but I get treated like a king because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to look broke and get treated like a king because if you look rich, people are only going to be there with their handout, and that's not what you want. You don't really want people over there just handout trying to get as much as they can from you because at the end of the day, sometimes you're going to give them some, but sometimes they're going to try to trick you into giving it to them. They're going to put you in a compromising position so that they can bail you out of that position so that your gratitude will be that you compensate them because they helped you get fucked over. I'm not trying to be that kind of guy. I prefer to look broke, stay broke in the eyes of society, but live a rich life, which is going to be pretty hard to do as we travel the world on the podcast, but it'll be too late. I'll have already left the country. You can't notify me if I'm not here. Now, you guys got to understand this is society is telling us that we're supposed to pick sides as men. But what if the battle itself is a trap? What if the constant pressure to choose between two incomplete halves of a whole is the very thing creating a deep, silent identity crisis? Now, this false choice is leaving millions of men feeling lost, adrift in a sea of conflicting expectations, and questioning their very role in the modern world. Now, they're caught in a culture crossfire, paralyzed by a debate that offers no real victory. Now, today, we're not picking a side because we never pick sides because I'm on the profiting side. I don't care which side of the debate you're on as long as I'm getting paid from my side of the debate. So we're going to end the debate in and of itself. We're going to expose the false um, dichotomy for what it is and offer a third path, a way forward that doesn't force you to choose between your strength as a man and your heart in love and relationships. To understand the conflict, we have to first understand the soldiers. So let's start with the figure that casts the longest shadow over the modern masculinity, because the traditional man, which we've been talking about all week, he's an archetype etched into our collective consciousness through centuries of stories, historical necessity, and cultural reinforcements. That men live silent lives of desperation. And you're right. Men do live silent lives of desperation. In fact, I tell people on a regular basis men are reactionary. So you have to understand why a man is doing what he did, because since men are reactionary, their survival instincts, their self preservation is going to have them change their original intent and behavior to make sure that they survive the engagement. Because one thing that men rarely do is retreat from a social interaction. They very rarely, even the conflict avoidant ones, will first surrender in the argument to stay in the fight to keep the relationship alive. They may um, dominate the conversation to prevent from having disagreements in the relationship to keep the relationship alive. They may sacrifice their personal feelings and their personal expectations to cater to the lack of recognition to their personal feelings and their personal expectations to keep the relationship alive. 10 to 30% of men leave the relationship. The other 70 to 80 or 70 or 90% of men stay. No matter what's going on, they stay. And they stay not just because they're afraid of being alone. They stay because men are fixers. So what are they going to do with a toxic relationship? They're going to try their best to fix it. They're not going to say this isn't worth it and walk away. They're going to try their best to fix it. 10 to 30% of men determine that this relationship is not worth my time or effort or resources and walk away from it. And usually men leave for specifically two distinct reasons. They don't like the way they're being treated by their woman, or she cheated on them. The third reason is both. Outside of those things, no man walks away from a woman because she ain't contribute enough. She ain't buy him what he wanted for his birthday. She ain't got enough time off to spend. That none of that stuff happens. They leave because they don't like the way they're being cheated, or she cheated on them. Now, cheating comes in more than one fashion, because you have she actually slept with another person, or emotional cheating, where she is showing more emotional attention to somebody else than what she's showing to her man, or she stole his money, which is financial infidelity, because she's taking money out of the family, out of the household, and redirecting it somewhere else without his knowledge or consent. Now, those are the dynamics. If that's not going on, some men can take being devalued and disrespected and stay in a relationship because at least she's not cheating on him. Some men can deal with the woman that's cheating on him because at least she values and respects him. But if both of those things are going down, that's it. That relationship is done. Now the women are going to blame the men, but the fact is that if we've talked about this before, in female relationships, they have a higher catastrophic rate of failure than female male relationships, and the lowest failure in relationships is male male relationships. And the breakups in female female relationships are the exact same complaints as the breakups in male female relationships, but the breakups in male male relationships are not the same complaints as the breakups in male female or female female relationships. So you just got to think about those dynamics. So if when she dates a woman, she has the same complaints that a man has when a man dates a woman, then the women need to come together and think, what is the real reason why the relationships are failing for the 80, 70, 90% of women that walk out of the relationship? Because when you take the men out of the equation, if the complaints are still there, who's really contributing to the failure? Now, I still say that both parties have reasonable responsibility in it, but I also understand that if both parties were to start coming together and compromise on it, that you would start seeing better results. The question for myself: how do I get rid of the ads? Answer that you don't want to hear: get YouTube Prime, YouTube Premium. YouTube Premium is like $13 or $15 a month, no ads. Um, that's like the best way to do it. And you'll have no ads anywhere. You'll have no ads on this podcast. You'll have no ads when you're listening to YouTube music. You'll have no ads anywhere. So if you're on YouTube 10 hours a day, every day of the week, then uh, you know, and you don't like ads, then I would say get premium. But if you don't want to pay unnecessary money for the to not have the ads, then love the ads, because for every time you get hit with an ad, guess what I get hit with? A very, very, very small half a penny per ad per person for each ad that comes across the screen. So the longer you stay on the show, the more ads you get, the more you're contributing to the channel. Because if you get 6 ads by yourself, Michael, I just got 3 cents over the course of 3 hours. You say those like that, I'm out. I'll leave it. But think about this now. Think about the men who built the world that we live in now. You get nothing. What you mean? You're getting wisdom, you're getting financial advice, you're getting personal advice. What you mean? Social interaction. What you mean? If you really wanted to jump on and have a bro conversation, you can click the link, approve the mic, approve the camera. You'd be sitting right over here on the screen when we do a side by side situation. So what you mean? And you're getting it all for free. When I drop you guys down with tips on where to put your money, where to spend, where to invest, where to save, where to take your money from, this is just, yeah, free therapy, free therapy. And no joke, with therapists costing between 30 and $300 an hour, and you can sit here and talk to me for 2 to 3 hours a night, uh, 7 nights a week, $15 a month, so that you don't have ads, is cheap as fuck. Matter of fact, sliding me $50 on the podcast once a month, cheap as fuck, because it way cheaper. So you got uh free therapy, you got free financial advice, free personal advice, free planning, life coach advice, health and fitness advice. We got all kinds of advice going on in this podcast. It's crazy. That's probably why the girls was like, they don't like it. Need a membership fee. The cheapest membership fee I think is like $3 to $5. I think there is a membership on the podcast. It just at 70. uh we've got a triple diamond platinum package. So when Max Opposer was asking about that $500 membership fee, we got a lot of stuff going on for the membership fee. But we're a growing podcast. We're going to get there. Now, those men that I was telling you guys that built the world that we live in now, those are the men of the Industrial Revolution, the soldiers back from the war, those that are the fathers of the 1950s, Michael, your generation. The values back then, that was almost always measured by what they did. Their identity was forged in duty, responsibility, and provisions. I had a buddy of mine tell me just today that he makes sacrifices in his life out of duty. And I had to tell him, wholeheartedly that being duty bound is a good thing to do. You have to ask yourself, first of all, who are you dedicated to? Because a man defines himself when he finds a purpose in life. Men who don't have a purpose in life do one or two things. They either behave recklessly because they have no responsibility, or they give up on living life and just lay in the bed until they die. But when you have a purpose in life, you get out of bed every day for that purpose. Most of us, especially those of us who grew up in financial challenge housing, dedicated ourselves to working so that we can make enough money to take care of ourselves or our families. We dedicated ourselves to take care of our siblings, our elders. You know, we had children. We dedicated ourselves to take care of our kids. You know, and even when we're no longer needed, we've been duty bound to work, and we don't know how to stop. We don't know how to turn that off. You guys asked me a few months ago, when do you stop climbing that ladder? When do you call it quits? And my answer was, when you recognize that you have enough. You can keep climbing, but you don't have to. You choose to. So, those individuals from back in the day, the last of the baby boomers, who were out there doing it out of duty, those guys that are out there doing it out of responsibility and dedication, those guys were expected to be the rock. See, I'll work till the day I die. Not I, said the black guy. And I choose to. Nah, 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 nah. I will work until my money is capable of working for me. I will live a reasonable lifestyle. And when my money surpasses the cost of that reasonable lifestyle, I will no longer have to work. I might choose a side hustle just to make a little extra for splurging, but I will not do anything that requires me to be present on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Anything that I'm doing right now that requires me to respond to an alarm clock so that I don't be late, I will stop doing that. Well, except for this podcast, because this is probably the only thing that I really like doing. But everything else is like, nope. But even with the podcast, I'm told 10 minutes before the show starts that I got 10 minutes left, and 30 minutes later, I go live. A good point, like my side hustle. But you're doing it when you want to do it because you don't got nothing else to do, not because you need more money, and you're doing it because you need to do it. There's a big difference. When there's no longer a need, you can start being more strategic about your approach. So those old heads, stoic, resilient, and emotionally buttoned up. They come from an area where strength wasn't just a virtue, it was a survival mechanism. And emotions and fear, sadness, doubt were seen as liabilities, luxuries a man tasked with protecting and providing for his family just couldn't afford. The men in those worlds had clear, defined roles, and these men was the leader and the protector and the breadwinners of our society back in the day. And in that clarity, there was a profound sense of purpose. So it's easy to look back now and critique this model, to call it rigid or emotionally stunned. And we talked about it earlier this week about how it is observed in modern times as being rigid and emotionally stunned. But first, we have to be honest about its appeal. There's a reason so many young men today crave what they see as classic masculinity. It offers a map, it gives you a clear set of rules in a world that often feels ruleless, specifically because it is arbitrarily defined, which is one of the reasons why I act on uniformity. Because if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And everything that we talk about here, we try to make it make sense before we go off the air. Uh, uniformly speaking, if it's supposed to be this way when you do it, it's supposed to have the same outcome when I do it. It's the situation is not supposed to change because we change genders, because we change ethnicities, because we change financial status. It is supposed to be the same all the way across. And if it is not fair to the magnitude of balance. And because it is not fair to the magnitude of balance, it is arbitrarily opposed. And it's typically arbitrarily opposed by whoever has the most authority in the situation to enforce the arbitrary rules. So those individuals that are looking for defined structure, because a lot of people they're going to call themselves standing on some false sense of morals and ethics, but those morals and ethics are arbitrarily opposed because it is based on your upbringing, based on your expectations, and based on outcomes as it impacts you. So you will do something a certain way until that method compromises your agenda, and then you'll do the exact opposite just to save face to protect your agenda, which means that your moral code can be compromised by subjective circumstance. I come from a uniform perspective so wholeheartedly that the proposed fuck it method comes into play because if it's going down and I'm going to perform it in a specific way, I've already come to understand that I have accepted the consequences of my action before I perform the action, whereby if I'm in that situation where I'm going to act in that fashion, that is the fashion that I will always act in every time I'm in that situation regardless of who's on the other end of the situation and regardless of what they expected the outcome to be, the outcome is going to be the same. If you were the target, it doesn't matter if it's a dude, a chick, a kid, an adult, a rich person, a poor person. If that's the target, that's the target. Michael says, "You're asking men to become women in today's society, according to Google." F method is the best way. You're right. The fucking method is the best way. The truth is that is the ultimate. I'm gonna put this back up here. The ultimate understanding is that if you follow the true method of the feminine expectation of masculinity, is that men are going to be more feminine than they used to be masculine. However, redefining your position in masculinity is going to shift a whole lot more because we got too many laws that are pressuring us from being alpha males and the resulting legal issues that follows that prevents us from acting the way we normally would have acted when these laws weren't readily enforced. We have a lot more equality in certain laws than what we used to do back in the day, and that allows us to placate towards more feminine structures because back in the day, a man could not get a domestic violence case against a woman. Try that shit in 2025. Dude's getting paid. She hit him and he can show the cop that black eye. Yeah, he can get a restraining order, take out a lawsuit. Back in the day, back in the 80s, when your girlfriend used to get mad and she used to take your car with a baseball bat. Y'all remember that country song where the woman was like, "Oh yeah, I slashed his tires and cut up his seats and hit his mirror with a baseball bat, and he'll think twice before he cheat." Y'all remember that song? Y'all remember that song? And I used to tell myself, "Shoot, she be looking just like my vehicle when she done." But in modern times, nah, go ahead and tear my vehicle up. Go ahead and tear my vehicle up, spray paint all over it, key the car up and everything. And I want to make sure, because I park my vehicle in front of a surveillance camera. I want to make sure that I got you tearing up my vehicle so that I can go ahead and have you buy me a new one. Because once it has been officially considered totaled, you will have to take care of the felony level property damage, restitution, which will require you to buy me another car at the value that it cost me to replace my car. And yeah, we ain't hanging out no more after that. So those toxic relationships where you cheated on a girl and she done tore up your vehicle and now you got to catch the bus because you ain't got no car no more. Nah, nah. You tear up my vehicle if you want to, These days, it don't work like that. He said, you don't get ahead in life by being nice. Before He Cheat is the song by Carrie Underwood. Yeah, but Carrie Underwood would be under the jail in 2025 doing that. she would be she would be carrying a long sentence under the jail doing it. Now, standing on this area of masculinity, it's supposed to promise respect earned through actions, which is something that we don't get anymore in 2025, which is why one of the reasons why the old model doesn't exist as well as it used to. And the identity that was built on an unshakable foundation of discipline and providing for those that you love is also been compromised. And these aren't small things. So the responsibility, resilience, and leadership that are powerful, positive traits, they're not as respected in modern times. They're expected situationally when it benefits non masculine individuals. But when it doesn't benefit them, they're fighting for dominance. Now, the traditional man, at his best, is a pillar of stability. He's a person that you can count on when everything falls apart. He endures. The problem isn't that these qualities are inherently bad. The problem is that they were presented as the entirety of what it means to be a man. And this archetype, born of historical necessity, is where it became a rigid cage, a set of expectations that left no room for the other half of the human experience, where these men was taught how to build a house, but not how to make it a home. A lot of men believe that we build the house, and if you build it, she will come. So all you have is that missing piece of the puzzle, which is the woman that will make a house a home, like Luther Vandross. It's not. That's not the case. Your house is supposed to be a home before she get there. She's supposed to know how to keep the home homely. If she don't know how to do that, you got the wrong shit. Some of these guys was taught how to provide for a family, but not how to emotionally connect with them. So you get the wife, you have the kids, and you go to work, make your money, bring your money back to the house, and take care of all the people in the house, and then leave and go back to work. But you never come back to the house and spend time with the people in the house. Just because you have kids doesn't make you a parent of kids because you're never there to take care of them because you choose to be at work to make money to provide for their existence. The work life balance has always been off. Gen Zs, baby boomers, well, Gen Xers and baby boomers, because Gen Zs ain't got no responsibility. Make home or hell. Well, shit, if you got a female in your house making it hell, you need to get rid of that female. I had a wise man tell me once that if she causes you a headache, get rid of her. So inside of the first 3 months, if you get a headache from this chick, you get rid of her. These guys have been taught in the past, given a suit of armor, but was never shown how to take that armor off. And for generations, this was just the accepted price of manhood. We keep falling on this ideology of it is what it is, but it is what we make it. And traditions make sense back in the day when they were effective. But when times change, traditions are inherently supposed to change with the times. Because when it is no longer convenient and when it is no longer effective, you have to prioritize efficiency. So sometimes things are going to have to change. Now, let's turn to the other side of the battlefield because the man in love, or as we might more accurately call him, the emotionally intelligent man. This is the archetype that has emerged from the huge societal shifts of the last 50 years or so. As the rigid gender roles of the past began to dissolve, as women entered the workforce in huge numbers, and as our collective understanding of psychology depends on a deeper understanding, a new set of expectations for men began to form. So society started asking for something different. It wasn't enough to just be a silent provider anymore. Now, men were being asked to be partners in a much fuller sense of the word. And they were asked to be present, to be communicative, and to be emotionally available. Like I said, your kids are raised by the environment you were raised in. Most parents only spend about 15 minutes per day with their kids, breakfast and dinner. Actually, the statistic was at one point in time approximately 30 minutes per day, where 15 minutes for breakfast and 15 minutes for dinner, um, or less. And that is for those individuals who are not working swing shifts where they don't get to see their kids nearly at all. And you're right, they are going to be raised by their environment, which is one of the reasons why the old saying was it takes a village to raise a child. Because wherever your kids are, the adults in that area are supposed to teach those children right from wrong socially, what is socially accepted and what is socially unaccepted, not necessarily uh, right from wrong. Ah, check a purse for T balls. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, yeah. Some guys who withdraw from their authoritative roles end up being in a position where they no longer have the masculine position in the relationship. And in those situations, it's in her purse. But if you're not always there, you're going to have that dynamic shift. You're going to have that change where you're probably going to play into a few more um, roles than what you would have expected to play into. Take, for example, the new currency of connection, which became vulnerability, the ability to express feelings, to share insecurities, and to connect on a deep emotional level went from being a perceived weakness to a celebrated strength. Now, this is the man in love scenario. His strength isn't found in his stoicism, but in his courage to be open. His value isn't just in what he does, but in who he is and how he relates to others. Now, this model prioritizes self-awareness, empathy, and the authentic expression of a full range of human emotions. It recognizes that true connection, whether with a partner, a child, or a friend, is built on trust. And trust can't exist without vulnerability. Well, men aren't supposed to cry, apparently, but we do cry some tears. We find plenty of different ways. We cry in the car, the traffic light. We cry in the rain. We that's why men walk with no umbrellas because we got plenty of time to let it all out in the rain. Go for a nice long walk in the storm. Ah, look at that. That's what mama used to always say. Ah, you better shut up while I give you something to cry about. Go stand in the corner. Oh, that's crazy. Now, the benefits of the man in love model is undeniable. Men who embrace this path report deeper, more fulfilling relationships. They experience better mental health because they aren't crying or carrying the crushing weight of suppressed emotions. They're not crying about it either. They find a new kind of fulfillment that comes from authentic self expression, from living a life that's aligned with their internal world, not just a set of external expectations. And this model allows men to be fully human, to experience the richness of life without the suffocating constraints that certain feelings are unmanly. Now, preventing you from recognizing or identifying certain feelings as unmanly feelings, dismissing or repressing them, which, as we explained yesterday, has a significantly large quantity of side effects. You now face those feelings, recognizing that these feelings are possible and it is rightfully able for you to express them. On the surface, this sounds like progress, and in many ways it is. But this new mandate didn't just show up quietly, it crashed headfirst into the deeply entrenched legacy of the traditional man. And in that collision, it created a new kind of pressure. The expectations to be emotionally open became just that, another expectation, another standard to live up to, another way to fail. And here we are at the heart of the problem. So this isn't a simple evaluation from an old model to a new one. It's a violent collision of the two powerful and seemingly contradictory ideals. Society, in effect, is sending men an impossible set of mixed messages. Be strong, be vulnerable at the same time. Be a leader, but be collaborative at the same time. Be decisive, but be sensitive at the same time. Be a rock, but be open to your own heart at the same time. The old rules haven't entirely disappeared. They just have new, often conflicting rules layered on top of them. We have situations where egalitarian expectations come when it benefits the other person. And then the traditional masculinity is reinforced when it benefits the other person, the same person. And the man in the situation folds to the expectations of another, specifically to fit into social expectations. And because a man is still expected to be a provider, and studies consistently showing a huge majority of men still feeling that pressure, but now he's also expected to be the primary emotional caretaker of the relationship. Men have a higher responsibility in a relationship. The men are supposed to lead the relationship to a success. So the men have to figure out why the relationship is failing and then individually put in the effort to rectify the relationship. The women that are in the relationship that might actually be partially contributing to the problem are not required to fix the problem. They're just supposed to go with the flow of whatever change is being made in the relationship if they want to. The responsibility is not uniform. Her duty is to him, and his duty is to her. But the problem that we have with that dynamic is that if she's not happy, he's not happy. But if she's happy, she's happy. Happy wife, happy life montage. But we don't even have a happy husband mantra at all. They say behind every strong man is a strong woman. But truth be told, behind every strong man is a bunch of dependents that he's dragging along with him because there isn't much, if any, support for strong men. There are no laws designed to protect and aid strong men. The laws protect the weak and the rich who, while they can be financially powerful, are actually weak because they don't need to apply themselves to any type of survival because they can pay somebody to survive for them. Y'all got to understand these men are told that suppressing his emotions is toxic when they're being the man in love perspective, but he's also terrified that expressing himself will be seen as weak or unstable from the mentality of the traditional masculine man. This is the core of the identity crisis. It's the feeling of being pulled in two opposite directions at the same time. It creates a state of paralysis. So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. Now, if you lean into traditionalism, you risk being called toxic, emotionally distant, and out of touch. If you lean into emotional openness, you risk being seen as soft, weak, and lacking the very strength and decisiveness that society still often quietly demands from the men. And this leaves men in a state of profound confusion. They feel lost. They are, as one analysis puts it, in a landscape where the old map has been declared obsolete, but no one has given them a new one. So they are told endlessly who not to be. Don't be toxic. Don't be a chauvinistic. Don't be domineering. But they get the very little guidance on who they could be. There's no clear, celebrated vision of a healthy, whole modern man. Notice when we're in a lot of relationships, uh, women and family will come down on a man about what he did wrong, what he didn't accomplish, what he didn't put his effort into or didn't put enough effort into. But there's very few times, if any, that women and the men's families come back and praise the man for what he did right, what he put enough effort into, what he accomplished and succeeded in. Strange, isn't it? We can be told when we're fucking it up, but we're never told that we're doing a good job. We can be damned all of our lives and only praised on our deathbed. Isn't that interesting? And you're going to find out so many men withdraw from society. They grow quiet. They feel a deep sense of loneliness, a feeling that, as one 2023 study found, a majority of men from millennials to Gen Zs with the statement, no one really knows me well. I got to tell you, I have had 13 conversations in the last 4 months where I have honestly said in a group that nobody here knows me at all. And this is a group of people who are supposed to know who I am. You know, when I really realized that no one in the group knew who I was, one of the people that I had met 2 years ago was sitting across the room from me. The primary person in the discussion asked that person about me. You're sitting across the table from me. And the exact words are, I am still looking for him. The person leading the conversation said, you can stop looking. He's sitting right over there. That was the moment when I completely understood nobody knows who I am. And the people that interact with me could probably care less because if they're not benefiting from me as a man, where I'm paying for something that they want me to pay, taking them somewhere that they want me to take them, sacrificing myself for their success, that they're less likely to give a shit about what's going on with me. How am I doing? Am I okay? Do I have enough? Men are defined by what they bring to the table. Women and children are idolized just from existing. Just like Michael said, just by your actions alone. Exactly. And this isn't an exaggeration. A growing body of research confirms this profound isolation is widespread among men. They are stranded on an island of confusion, caught between the ghost of their grandfathers and the expectations of the modern world, with no idea how to bridge the gap. They are torn apart by a debate that frames two essential parts of the human spirit, strength and love, as enemies. And we've defined this particular type of battlefield, but now we have to walk through it. So we need to look at the real world carnage as it is, where this internal war that we struggle through as men is causing a lot of things in the lives of a man, conflict that we just cannot avoid, where in the minds of the men, their relationships, and in their souls, there is unrest for primarily the largest majority of their lives. And this isn't just a philosophical debate, it's a public health crisis that's hiding in plain sight. And we just discussed all of the chaos that this brings to your health just yesterday. The constant pressure to choose, the fear of getting it wrong, the mental gymnastics of trying to be two contradictory things at once. It takes a devastating psychological toll. Men are living in a state of perpetual anxiety, feeling like they're falling off of their expectation of being a man, that they are failing at their social expectations to be a man, no matter which path they choose. As we said earlier, damned if you do, damned if you don't. This creates a fertile ground for depression, anxiety, and gnawing senses of inadequacy. Inadequacy. Yeah, I said that. Woo! So let's look at the dark side of clinging too tightly to the old ways, because when the positive traits of the traditional man, which are strength, resilience, and responsibility, are taken to an extreme and stripped of all emotional awareness, they curdle into what we've called toxic masculinity, as we've addressed earlier this week. And this isn't condemnation of masculinity itself, it's a diagnosis of a specific harmful expression of it. It's a masculinity that is defined by aggression, emotional suppression, and the need to dominate others to prove one's worth. And it's the belief that the only acceptable emotion is anger, that vulnerability is the ultimate sin. And the research that backs this here is chilling and unequivocal. Michael says, I'm going to crawl up in the corner. Strict adherence to these old, rigid, masculine norms is a direct line to mental illness. Men who believe they must handle all their problems on their own and never show weakness are at a significantly higher risk for depression and anxiety. It's a primary reason men are less likely than women to ever seek help for mental illness. We talked about yesterday, what, 34% of men in comparison to women go and get help. They suffer in silence, and they've been taught to interpret that as strength. There is a clinical term for this: normative male alexia. I'm going to have to put that in the comment section. They didn't they didn't give y'all a psychological terminology for this situation. Normative male alexithymia. Look at that. Almost like a male Greek god of chaos. And it sounds very complex, but it's a simple, tragic idea. In 100 years, people will still be talking about this issue. I hope in 100 years, people will be making shorts off of this podcast and replay it as an I told you so. And make sure y'all like and subscribe as y'all slide through here now. We gotta understand that this describes the way boys are socialized from young age to be unable to identify or describe their own emotions. They are taught to disconnect from their inner world. When asked how they feel, the answer is fine or nothing. Not because they're being deceptive, but because they genuinely lack the language and self awareness to even know what is going on. And this emotional illiteracy isn't a personal failing, it's a societal training program, and its consequences are catastrophic. He said, we made it through the 921 crisis, didn't we, though? We slid straight through it. I don't recall many glitches in the show today. They fixed the tower in the neighborhood. That's what happened. Because that motherfucker was fucking up all last week. We dropped signals and everything. I got to call them tomorrow and have them reboot everything. Eventually, either it's going to stay consistent or we're just going to have to relocate to a different region where the network is consistent. Yeah, we actually, that was an hour ago, bro. We're off to a good start. Multiple studies have found a terrifying link between these norms and the suicide, as we talked about yesterday and the day before. So, the very rules that are supposed to make men strong are, in fact, killing them. So, one analysis of data from the National Violent Deaths Reporting System shows that for men aged 45 to 64, job, finance, or housing problems, a direct attack on the traditional provider role, were a factor in 22% of suicides. So they took their own lives because they lost their job, their finances sucked, or they had problems in their house. Chris Benoit, I'm just trying to told y'all, this isn't just a crisis. It's a slaughter. And it's happening quietly behind closed doors in the hearts of men who have been told their entire lives that their suffering doesn't matter. We actually have a lot of times in modern relationships where women are devaluing men, shaming men, demasculating men by uh, ignoring a man's concerns for his lack of satisfaction in a relationship. And it doesn't matter if what the other person is doing is hurting his feelings or if he believes that the behavior of his partner is disrespectful to the image of the relationship. If the man speaks out on that, the woman devalues the man. You're not my daddy. You can't tell me what to do. I'm a grown woman. Be a man. Don't get your panties in a twist. All of those comments that a woman would say to discourage a man from making a comment. Now, there are different kinds of women because we have certain women that grew up in this particular type of environment, but we have a whole different kind of woman that actually does value, respect, and appreciate their men. But those are the kind of women that do not argue and fuss and shame their man for putting up his opinion. So don't think that I'm sitting over and talking about all women. It's not about all women. There's just some of them that actually discourage men, but there's enough of them that are doing it that the majority of men have the same complaint. Now, remember, society is driven to approximately 49.9% men and 51.1% women, something to that effect. So there's inherently one man for every woman on the face of the earth, might be a couple extra women than there are men, but ideally, the negative toxic women circulate through more men than the positive women that get married off. The women that get married and stay married till they die are not recirculated back into the dating field as often as the toxic women that are not beneficial for a healthy masculine position. So you have to understand that societal norms, it is not just the women that devalue men, other men devalue men as well. And that's what makes this the worst because there is no one side that's saying you're doing a good job, fella. Dad's cutting you down, grandpa's cutting you down, mom's cutting you down, girlfriend's cutting you down, sister's cutting you down. Because as a man, you are supposed to behave a certain way. And if you don't do that, they're not satisfied. And nobody has the same opinion. That tug of war is ridiculous. Uh, Michael says, I don't allow it in my life. I feel if like someone is being disrespectful, I tell them. So I'll let them know that I don't like it, knock it off. And if they continue, it's the last time. And time is short. So there's no room to let people cut you down. Now, that is what I was telling you guys before when I said stand on your non negotiable expectations for behavior. So when these individuals are not respecting your expectations, where you're showing them the levels of respect and mutual respect, treating them the way you expect them to treat you, and they are not reciprocating in that fashion, you make it known that this behavior is unacceptable. And if they wish to stay in your presence, that they will have to change this behavior. One last time we revisit this negative issue, then that is the last time that there will not be a reciprocation. I had a buddy that I went to college with. We were bros for a long period of time. He disrespected me too many times. I cut him off. He would keep trying to reconnect, and I wouldn't allow it. He would try to reconnect from one of my other buddies, and I wouldn't allow it. Eventually, he gave up on the situation because I was like, "Look, I am driven for success. You're not expressing that behavior. If I am not seeing from you what I'm delivering to you, then we can't roll together because you're going to benefit from being with me, and then I'm going to lose out because I'm with you, and that's not the same." And that lack of respect towards each other, it just ended up being, I said, no, I'm going to cut it short. And when I cut it short, that was a wrap. And every now and again, he'll pop up out of nowhere and jump onto one of my social media platforms. And if I see him in the comment section, I recognize he's still around. But again, I said, I got to let you go. I got to cut it short, bro. And when I cut it, I cut it. There was no turning back. And like Michael said, there is no need to carry dead weight around. You got to get rid of it. You are the product of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. So if you've got 3 people in your group that's failing, then you are likely not succeeding as well as you should be. And you need to just like to improve the team, you have to cut some folks and trade up some other folks. You're going to have to do the same thing in your personal network. If you've got folks around you that's failing more often than they should be, you got to replace them with people that are succeeding more than you are, and then build on that. Now, that doesn't mean that you got to get rid of your whole network all the time. It just means that you're going to spend less time with failures and more time with success. Yeah, you might spend 5 or 10 minutes once a year on the phone with people that never got their shit together, but you might spend every day with people that is always in success. You don't have to be profiting off of their success. But if you're able to see success and learn from success and replicate success, you'll spend more time learning from success and less time hanging out with failures. You have to prioritize always trying to elevate yourself. Because if you prioritize always trying to elevate someone else, you will forever plateau at their level of failure. Because the difference between you climbing the ladder and then throwing down a rope and pulling up whoever wants to join you versus you pushing somebody up, if they don't feel like climbing, they're only going to go as high as you can hold them. And that's it. But you can't go nowhere because you holding them up, but they're holding you down. So you have to leave them here and climb. Now, if you reach down and somebody grab your hand, you can pull that person up. But there is never a situation where you should stop growing just to stay with the clique, that you should stop improving just to roll with the squad. People I know back in the 80s and 90s used to call us sellouts because we went from being failures to being successful. Bro, ain't nobody trying to live and die on Section 8 with government funds sending the money and shit. Look at what just happened this year. The government just cut most of the public funding. Folks is being kicked off of programs they've been on 10, 20 years. And for what? So that they got more money to put towards the defense bill. And if we don't take care of ourselves, we ain't gonna have nothing. Cause yeah, he giving $1,000 to all the newborns, but he ain't giving shit to the grown folks. If you ain't got it together, bro, you ain't got it together. You can pass favors back and forth to your homies, but the rent still got to be paid on the first. And if y'all ain't got the money between the two of y'all, everybody on the street by the 15th. Y'all got to figure that stuff out. Like I said, never put yourself down. There's enough people in the world that will do it for you. Oh no, Michael, it ain't second generation welfare families. This is third and fourth generation welfare families. Because remember, with the baby boomers, babies were having babies. We had 15-year-old mothers. We had 40-year-old grandmothers at one point in time. And those 40-year-old grandmothers are probably 65 or 70 right now with 4 and 5 generations of kids in the same house. You know what I mean? This ain't, it ain't just second generation welfare babies. We talk about fourth and fifth generation welfare babies where they grew up in the system, where the parents go swing out there and go and take them to go get that crazy check so that now so and so ain't never got to work. They sit on the porch smoking weed because they get their check on the 15th and they get another check on the first and they don't never got to apply themselves to nothing because they was defined at a young age as mentally incompetent, so they never have to sustain their standard of living because the government will pay for them. There's a whole 3 or 4 generations of folks that's that way, and they were taught to accept that lifestyle. So they make extra money on the side doing illegal activities because they can't earn an honest living because they're supposed to be mentally incompetent. They don't want to fuck up their government check, so they don't apply themselves to being financially successful. Because once you start showing financial stability, they cut off your check. You're only allowed to make a certain quantity of extra money between $500 and $1,000 a month, and then after that, they start taking $2 off for every dollar that you make. So you make $2,000, they're gonna take $2,000 off of the money they was giving you. If they was giving you $3,000, you're still making $3,000, but you now got to work for 2,000 of it. So if you was trying to make that $3,000 for free, all you got to do is just work under the table cash money, whether it's selling drugs or doing odds and ends jobs with other people where folks just give you cash and then just keep getting your disability checks. And back in the 80s and 90s up until the 2000s, the some of the women were actually, each child was a check. So they were producing 5, 7 kids so that they could get a check from each one of the kids. Then when the kids get grown, the kids is getting a check themselves. Yeah. So we've got at least 2 generations, maybe 3 generations of failure in the low income community because of that model. Now we have an internal devastation that is inevitable and it spills outward because of these systemic expectations that we have, which is poisoning the very relationships that men are trying to build. We have the conflict between the traditional man and the man in love that creates chaos in the friendships, family life, and especially in romantic partnerships. So when you consider the man who defaults to the traditional role, he may be a great provider and a hard worker and a lawyer partner, but his emotional stoicism creates a wall. His partner may feel unheard, unseen, and emotionally abandoned. She doesn't want a CEO, she wants a confidant. She doesn't just need a paycheck, she needs his presence. He, in turn, gets frustrated. He believes he's doing everything a man is supposed to do, working hard, providing a safe home, yet he's constantly being told he is not enough. He's showing his love in the only language he was ever taught, and the language of action is not what she's looking for. And he can't understand why it's not being received. Now, consider the man trying to embody the modern emotionally open ideal. He shares his feelings. He's expressed his anxieties. He embraces his vulnerability, but he often finds himself navigating a world that isn't quite ready for him. So he might be praised for his openness one moment only to be subtly criticized for being too sensitive or uh, not decisive enough. In the next situation, you might see some partners, while wanting emotional connection, may still hold subconscious expectations for the man to be a rock, creating a confusing trap where he's pushed for the very vulnerability that he was asked to show. And she's going to push him away. She's going to punish him for, and this happens a lot. You have, well, I want a man that's emotionally intelligent and open and honest and transparent and vulnerable, but then also at the same time, that's too weak. That's too sensitive. Well, hold on. You got to pick and choose, Miss Ma'am. Like I said, she's not a keeper. Throw her Strong men won't allow that. But see, that's the thing though. A man in love will compromise his own integrity in order to keep the woman, even if she is not valuable to him, even if he deserves better. If he got one that turns out to be a bad one, he will keep that one and try to fix the situation instead of recognizing that this isn't good for him and throw it back. Yeah, yeah. That's why when men were used to they used to be identified as dogs, it's because they were loyal to a fault, not because they were untamed and uncontrollable and out there screwing everything under the sun. They were identified as dogs because they were loyal to a fault where they will never abandon the loyalty to the person that they dedicate themselves to, no matter how bad they're treated by that person. Now, when you identify, if anybody who's ever had a dog in their life, no matter how good or how bad you treat that dog never wants to leave you. That dog always tries their best to come over and give you affection. That dog always tries to come and give you attention. That dog waits for you to bring them attention, waits for you to bring them affection. And some dogs where they're in situations where they're being physically abused or emotionally abused, those dogs are terrorized throughout their life, and they stay and they try their best to change how they do what they do to stay in a situation and hopefully not experience a negative catastrophic failure. But they never think, a dog never thinks, I'm running away. I'm not going to get treated like this no more. You take the dog out of that scenario, some dogs try to go back. Dogs are loyal to a fault. Now, from the demasculating part of things, women will call men dogs because they feel like, dogs will just hump anything. But the truth of the matter is that the ideology is that they will never give up on her, no matter how bad she treats them. And if women think about that, if you got a man and the situation ain't working right, maybe instead of giving up on him, since he hasn't given up on you, maybe you should just try to put more effort into changing how you do stuff so that you can see if your changes improves the situation. Let's throw some communication in there. Let's throw some communication in there. He said, a man in love is a fool. You are right. They're under my feet, getting in my way. Want one, the Chihuahua or the Pit? Nah, I got him under my feet too. I got one right next to the chair right now. If I talk too much about him, he'll climb into the chair and join the podcast. Now we understand that these men that are battling between masculinity and a man in love have this problem where they're being accused of being soft or weak, not just by other men, but sometimes by the very people who claim to want an emotionally intelligent partner. And this is a deep societal disconnect. The positive roles of masculinity are recognized, but men themselves feel confused and devalued on every turn. The result is um, relational chaos. Men struggle to form deep, meaningful friendships because the traditional script forbids the kind of vulnerability necessary for true intimacy. And this leads to profound social isolation. So they struggle in their romantic lives because they're trying to play a game where the roles are consistently changing and no one agrees on the one objective. Is the goal to be an unshakable leader or the empathetic partner? The truth is, it's both, but men have been taught it must be one or the other. So there's a powerful analogy used by psychologists to describe this predicament. And we've been talking about this all week. It's identified as the man box. So the perfect metaphor for the restrictive set of expectations that society places on men. Imagine a box. The walls are built from a list of rules where rule one, be strong. Rule two, don't show emotions except for anger. Rule three, be a breadwinner. Rule four, be dominant. Rule five, never ask for help. Rule six, don't be feminine or do anything with your bros that's considered feminine. From the moment they're born, boys are relentlessly pushed inside this box by parents, peers, media, and culture. The traditional man is the one who lives his entire life inside this box. He accepts the rules as the definition of his identity, and he may even feel a sense of pride and security within its walls because they're familiar and the expectations are clear. But it's a prison, like we said earlier this week, one that cuts him off from the full spectrum of his own humanity. So the man in love is the man trying to climb out of that box. He's pushing against the walls, trying to reach for a more authentic and emotionally connected way of being. But what does he find? He often finds that the world outside the box is extremely confusing and that many people, both men and women, are still invested in keeping the box intact. Now, this guy gets shamed for his escape attempt. Excuse me. His vulnerability is labeled as weakness. His emotional expression is called unmanly, to say the least. It's going to be called a whole lot worse, but we can't use those ideologies on the show. And this is going to make a real problem come up for men with the particular understanding of why. Michael says either you're taught at a young age or you learn by your mistakes, which is the mass or most common. And I'm not doing that again. Well, what we say we go through the school of hard knocks. Is it would you say love is a stage in romance? No, I would not say love is a stage in romance. I would say lust is a stage in romance, and then duty to that lust is a stage in romance. When you go from the honeymoon phase or puppy love to the decision and dedication to that person that you have lusted for, and then somewhere along the lines, you choose to identify that duty to that person as love because love is a choice that is made every single day in the relationship. Your actions and decisions are not because you love the person. Your actions and decisions is because you have to find yourself as duty bound to that person and you identify that duty as love. A man comes home to his wife every day because he feels obligated to do so, not because he loves her. A man puts up with her bullshit because he feels obligated to do so, not because he loves her. We call that love. We identify that as love. But that's a sense of duty. We feed the kids because we're told that that's what we're supposed to do. We go pick them up from school because we're told that's what we're supposed to do. We discipline them for not behaving the way society expects them to behave because one, That's what we're told to do. And two, our reputation depends upon how well our children behave, where we are considered as adults bad people if our children misbehave. So again, duty bound, but we're disciplining our children to keep them under societal control, but we identify that as loving them. But the concept of actual love, the emotional connection between you and the other person, it it's there out of duty, because you can't tell me that 25 years into a marriage, two affairs, and y'all still here because y'all love each other. Y'all still here because y'all don't know how to be apart no more. You are duty bound. When you grow up, when you're born into a family and you've been with that family for the first 25 or 30 years of your life, it is hard for you to move out of your parents' house and go live on your own, because you have been established over the first 20 years of your life to be duty bound to this family. The first time you branch out, whether you go to college, whether you get kicked out, whether you get into a relationship and move in with your partner, the first time you move out of the house that you grew up in, you are duty bound to that lifestyle, and you are not sure how to change that. So no, I'm not going to say that love is a stage in romance. Love, identified as an emotional attachment, a strong, unwavering emotional attachment to another, happens 150 times in a lifetime, but you are not in 150 relationships in a lifetime, because over the average of 75 to 85 years, you're falling in love, strong emotional attachment, upward of 3 to 5 times a year. How many wives do you have? Most of us have either one, none, or a few ex-wives. Got to think about that. One at a time. You pick them up from school because hopefully they're your kids. Again, duty bound. Because until they make that DNA test mandatory before you sign the birth certificate, you don't know it's yours until she puts you on child support. Like Ozzy says, sometimes I love her, sometimes I hate her, but I can't live without her. You're right. That's love. Off to play chess. Make sure you enjoy yourself, Michael. Don't get checkmated too soon. But one of the other things that we have to identify in this is not only that, uh, so with that saying that you have right there, not only do you have sometimes I love her, well, sometimes you're happy with her, sometimes you claim to hate her, sometimes you're not happy with her, but either way, you can't live without her, so you're duty bound to stay with her in that situation. But you call that love? That is not a phase of romance, not in my observation. But think of a man. Let's call him Mark. Mark's a manager. He's good at his job. He's decisive, responsible. People look to him for leadership. All classic man box traits. But his team is burning out. At home, his wife tells him he seems distant, that he never talks about his stress. She encourages him to be more open. So Mark tries. In a team meeting, instead of just barking orders, he admits he's worried about the project's direction and feels overwhelmed. He asks his team for their honest input. He's trying to be vulnerable. What happens? A few team members appreciate his honesty, but his own boss later pulls him aside and tells him he needs to project more confidence and not show weakness. That night, he tells his wife he's stressed about being a bad leader. She also, stressed from her own day, replies, "Well, you'll figure it out. You always do." In that moment, the door to vulnerability slams shut. He tried to step out of the box and was punished for it at work and met with platitude at home. The lesson he learns is clear. It's safer inside of the box. So he retreats, which is what most men do. He puts back on the armor, which is what most men do. He becomes a little more stoic, a little more distant, and the silent crisis deepens. This is the agitation. This is the pain. It's the exhaustion of fighting a war on two fronts, a war against outdated expectations and a war against new, often unclear demands of the modern world. It's a war that, when fought this way, has no winner, worse than a zero sum game. There is only the slow, grinding erosion of the male spirit. Now, I want you guys to understand, we've walked through the battlefield, we've seen the cost of this war. And if we stop here, we're left in a state of despair. But the whole point of this conversation is that the war itself is a lie. So the choice between traditional man and the man in love is a false dichotomy. It's a trap designed to keep men small, divided, and incomplete. The way forward isn't to choose a side, it's to declare the deliberate debate to be over. The goal is not to pick one archetype over the other. The goal is to integrate them. The solution is to transcend this conflict and evolve into something new, something whole. Let's call him the integrated man. The integrated man understands the fundamental truths. Vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. Emotional intelligence is not the enemy of resilience. They're two sides of the same coin. So true. Lasting strength is not the ability to feel nothing. It's the ability to feel everything and continue to move forward with purpose and integrity. I'm going to tell you this one more time. Lasting strength is not the ability to feel nothing. It's the ability to feel everything and continue to move forward with a purpose and integrity. Think of it like this: the traditional man has a strong shield. It can deflect blows and protect others, but he can't see the world clearly from behind it, and he can't connect with anyone while it's raised. The man in love has put down the shield to connect with others, but now he feels exposed and unprotected. The integrated man knows how to use the shield. He knows when to raise it to face adversity and protect his loved ones, but he also knows when to lower it to connect, to love, and to ask for help. He is not defined by the shield. He is the one who decides when and how to use it. This isn't about finding a balance or a bland 50-50 compromise. It is about a true synthetic um, position where the positive qualities of both archetypes are combined to create something greater than the sum of its parts. It's an evolution of masculinity into a more robust, flexible, and authentic form. It's a recognizing that the traits that we've put in opposition actually need each other to be fully realized. Responsibility without empathy becomes tyranny. Ladies, I'm going to say that again. Responsibility without empathy becomes tyranny. I want y'all to think about that for a second. Marinate on that thought for a second. Vulnerability without resilience becomes victimhood. I'm going to say that again. Vulnerability without resilience becomes victimhood. The integrated man unites them both. So, how do we get there? This isn't a switch that you can flip on and off. It's a journey of conscious personal development. It's going to require work, but it's the most important work a man can do. Here's the blueprint, step by step guide to becoming a integrated man. First step, you guys need to recognize the limits and honor the strengths. The first step is looking honestly at the legacy of traditional masculinity. This means acknowledging its limitations without de- demonizing its virtues. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to it without observing it from a negative light. Recognize how the role of emotional suppression can cause you and others harm. Acknowledge the isolation and strained relationships that Stoicism can create, but at the same time, honor the positive values it taught you. Did it teach you responsibility, discipline, a strong work ethic? Did not just throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to really analyze this. We actually had this conversation before when we were talking about religion. Somebody came and asked us about religious beliefs, and I explained how the majority of people that are over the age of 40 grew up in some kind of religious background, specifically because they had no choice. Their parents took them to church, whatever kind of church it was, synagogue or whatever, and up until they reached a certain age where they were allowed to choose not to go, they were forced into this routine of learning about religion. They might have been exposed to new religions. They might have been exposed to religious conversations in college, and then they learned different things. And after they learned different things, they started making decisions, and some decided to just identify themselves as spiritual or religious or claim a specific religious nationality. But at the end of the day, they all had the same background. When we compare that to the ideology of the traditional masculinity, we observed it, we experienced it, we learned it, we understand it. We're not going to dismiss the fact that it exists in our core upbringing, but now we have to learn how to use it. Your journey isn't about rejecting everything that your father or your grandfather stood for. It's about building upon their strengths while healing their wounds. Step two is going to be developing emotional intelligence. This is the foundational skills of the integrated man. Not a lot of men have been able to grasp the concepts of emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, as well as recognize and influence the emotions of others, not manipulate them. Positive influence of emotions is to recognize someone's emotions, recognize the cause of those emotions, and then recognize how to positively influence a more positive outcome between the two of you. An argument between you and your spouse could either, well, a misunderstanding between you and your spouse can either lead to an argument or lead to a discussion that can bring you a solution that prevents from having future arguments. You are not always going to agree, but you do not need to always turn that disagreement into a shouting match, into throwing things, into slamming doors, into parting ways and not communicating with one another for extended periods of time simply because you don't agree. This is not the type of situation where the kids can hear y'all fighting in the other room, can hear y'all disagreeing in the other room. You guys need to be able to communicate, and emotional intelligence allows you to recognize your feelings of discontent, recognize your feelings of frustration, sometimes anger, and pause, not lash out on your partner, and be able to calm yourself down and then communicate appropriately to your partner so that you can work out the issue, not just take shots at each other. That is a different way to address life, because when you're doing that in your personal life, your love life, friends, people in the street, people in your business life, you are able to make more decisive decisions. When you make an impulsive decision based on your emotions, where your emotions compromise your judgment. You are not able to act on logic and reason. Now, when you or someone else, third party, looks back on your situation, they are not looking at your situation from you had to do it that way because of how you felt. Logic dictates that that particular type of behavior should not have been done. You can't explain why you did it. Your excuse is, I was pissed off. I was upset. I was emotional. I was drunk. I was high, whatever. But no excuse that you give was, I was in my right mind when I made that decision. I analyzed the entire situation and decided that this was the best course of action. Emotional intelligence should be able to say that. That's one thing that we have to recognize and understand. So this is a practical, learnable skill. And it starts with expanding your emotional vocabulary beyond good, bad, and angry. You got to start by simply noticing when you feel a knot in your stomach or in some situations in your throat. Don't just call it stress. It's not always stress. Ask yourself, is it anxiety? Is it frustration? Stage fright. You might feel some butterflies in your stomach right before you go on stage, right before you have a big presentation, right before you have a live podcast. Recognize the anxiety. You might be pissed off that individuals are not doing the things that you would like for them to do, or the outcome didn't go the way you wanted it to go. That frustration that you did not achieve your goals. It could be disappointment and frustration. You're disappointed that you didn't achieve your goals, and that disappointment frustrates you. Is it fear? You got to think about these things. Being able to acknowledge the things that you are afraid of. Because while I can act in fear, and we call that courage, but sometimes it's foolish, but we still act either way in the midst of fear. The ability to keep going towards whatever outcome we're expecting to achieve and accepting whatever outcome we actually get, being able to keep moving forward, is identified as courage. But recognizing in the midst of continuing to take action, we are currently afraid, whether we're afraid of the outcome or we're afraid of the fallout that comes after the outcome. Because not always does the resolution of the situation become the problem or the concern that we have. What happens after that? Because no action and no situation that we get involved in is a happily ever after situation. It's just turning another page in the chapter of the book. So once we get past this chapter, are we prepared for the next chapter based on the decisions that we just made? Because some decisions cannot be undone. And we now have to live with the consequences of the decisions that we're about to make. And that situation might provide you with a level of fear. Well, I'm going to do this anyway, but I still can be afraid of how this might turn out for me in the long term. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it depending on the decision that you're making. It just means that you need to recognize when fear is present. Journaling this is an incredible and powerful tool for your ability to grow. I keep talking to you guys about write down how you think and how you feel about everything that you're doing. You should have like a wall of journals. Maybe you could turn it into a book, be a bestseller. But if you write down how you feel without judgment, you can learn how to identify your feelings. And once you can identify them, you can begin to understand them. And this is going to help you self regulate yourself. And that will become a superpower for you. The third step is going to be reframe vulnerability as courage. This is going to be the most critical mindset shift that you can achieve here because our society has successfully branded vulnerability as weakness for centuries. So you must consciously reject this lie. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the absolute epicenter of courage because it is the courage to be seen for who you truly are without armor or uh, pretense. Now, again, fear, but still acting, still taking action. It's telling your partner, I'm scared, fear of failing at this situation, fear of the future outcomes. And it's telling your friend, I'm struggling and I don't know what to do. It's telling your team, I was wrong. Think about it. What takes more strength? To pretend you have all the answers or to admit that you don't? To build a wall around your heart or to have the courage to let someone in? Vulnerability is the prerequisite for trust, for connection, for true strength. Now, step four, actively challenging the man box stigmas. And you have to become a warrior against the internalized rules of the man box. And when you hear that voice in your head say, don't cry, or asking for help is for losers, you must identify it for what it is, a piece of outdated social programming. Challenge it directly. Ask yourself, why? Why is it weak to seek guidance? Why is it unmanly to feel sadness? Now, if you reframe these concepts, seeking help is a sign of resourcefulness. Expressing emotion is a sign of being human. Redefine masculinity on your own terms, including empathy, cooperation, and emotional openness as pillars of strength. Then, step five, you want to build your support system. The journey of the integrated man cannot be made alone. The man box thrives on isolation. Your task is to deliberately break that isolation. This might mean seeking therapy, which is a space dedicated to helping you build these skills. And it might mean joining a men's group where you can connect with other men on the same path. It means investing in your friendships, being the kind of friend who initiates deeper conversations. So, investing in your friendships doesn't mean spending money on your friendship, it means putting effort in developing deeper relationships. Call a friend and don't just talk about sports or work. Ask him, how are you really doing today? And just listen. You'll be shocked at how many men are desperate to have this conversation, but are terrified to start it. Be the one who starts it. Now, step six, you want to practice integration daily. And this is where theory becomes reality because it's about consciously combining the best of both worlds in your everyday actions. Integrating responsibility and empathy is going to require you to be the man who works tirelessly to provide for his family, which is the traditional strength, and the man who comes home, gets on the floor, and truly listens to his children's stories about their day, validating their feelings, which is the modern empathy. Integrate resilience and vulnerability, where you can be the man who stoically endures a brutal week at work to hit a deadline, which is the traditional resilience, and the man who on Friday can say to his partner, I am completely burned out. I need your support. Can we just have a quiet weekend, which is the modern vulnerability? Recognizing that you can devise a time and a place for the behavior of both. Integrate leadership and collaboration, where you can be the man who makes a tough decision, decisive calls when crisis hits, which is the traditional leadership, and the man who, in the aftermath, gathers his team and says, that was my call, but I want to hear from all of you. What could we have done better? How are you feeling? Which is the modern collaboration, which again, in a relationship where women expect men to take the lead, he can take the decisions in catastrophic failure, fix the problem, but then turn back around to his partner and be able to collaborate with her about how that could have been done more effectively. Because in the midst of chaos is not the time to plan. You don't plan for a war while you're under siege. You pre plan for the expectation of being under siege. When you're under siege, you respond. Whoever can do will do. And then after it's over, we collaborate as to how could we have done that better. That there's a big difference there. This is the path, and it's a conscious, deliberate practice of holding two seemingly opposite ideas in your mind at the same time and finding the higher truth that unites them. So, what does this look like in actual practice? Well, let's paint a picture. In the workplace, the integrated man is the most effective leader. He has the ambition of the traditionalist, but combines it with the empathy and communication skills of the modernist. He can set a bold vision and hold people accountable, but he also creates a psychologically safe environment where people feel valued and are not afraid to innovate or fail. He doesn't lead through dominance, he leads through inspiration. He builds trust, not by pretending to be infallible, but by proving that he is reliable, honest, and cares about his people. In his relationships, the integrated man is a true partner. He can be a rock of stability in a crisis and a source of dependable strength his partner can lean on, but he also is not a stone. He's also a safe harbor for her emotions and his own. He doesn't fix her problems, he listens. He doesn't hide his own struggles, he shares them. This doesn't diminish his strength in her eyes, it magnifies it. So it forces a bond of profound depth and intimacy that the pure traditional man can never achieve. And the purely vulnerable man struggles to sustain. As a father, the integrated man is a revolutionary. He can teach his son how to be tough, how to face adversity, how to be resilient, but he can also teach his son that it's okay to cry when he's hurt. He can teach his daughter what it means to be strong, reliable, and while modeling these expectations of what a man is supposed to be, he can express the strength that is included with kindness and emotional expression, which gives her the first models of what a man should behave like in her presence. He breaks the general cycle of the man box by living a new example for his children. He shows his children that a man can be both a protector and a nurturer, a leader and a listener, strong and soft all at once. And this is not a fantasy. This is a potential that lives inside of every single man. And it's the birthright that was stolen by a culture that forced an impossible choice. Now, your job is going to be to reclaim it. Now, we started this conversation with War for the Soul of Men, but the ultimate lesson is this: the only way to win is to refuse to fight. The debate between traditional man and the man in love is a distraction. It's a false choice that has caused immeasurable pain, confusion, and isolation. The real path forward, the true evolution of masculinity lies in synthesis. It's in the integration of strength and vulnerability, of responsibility and empathy, of resilience and emotional openness. The future of masculinity is not about choosing between being a rock and having a heart. It's about understanding that the strongest rocks are the ones that have been shaped and weathered by the currents of a deep river. So this journey isn't easy. It requires you to unlearn a lifetime of social conditioning. It requires you to face your own fears and insecurities head on. It requires the courage to define for yourself what it means to be a good man, independent of society's conflicting and hollow expectations. But it is a journey towards wholeness. It is a path towards deeper relationships, greater personal fulfillment, and a more authentic, powerful sense of self. It is the work of ending the war within you so that you can finally be at peace and, in doing so, become a source of true strength for the world around you. Now, this is a complex conversation, and it's one that we need to have out in the open. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Make sure that you tell me what is one traditional trait and one modern trait that you think are essential for the integrated man of today. Let's build a new map together so that we can start thriving in our masculine positions. Now, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me as y'all wrap up the rest of this show here. First, I'm going to say, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you ladies to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. Again, fellas, we're about 65% male driven podcast from the male's perspective. We are increasing in numbers for the female model where women are actually coming to this podcast to learn how to make and save and invest money and make more decisive decisions to better improve the lifestyles that they want to have. Because, fellas, while I give you this information to make yourselves higher value men, this information is not gender exclusive. The ladies can take this information and utilize it for themselves and improve whatever it is that they would like to improve in their lives. Because if there's anything about your personal life or your financial life that is within your control that you are not satisfied with, you can proactively put forth the effort to make change. First thing you got to do is recognize that there is a problem. And the second thing that you have to do is recognize that there's change that needs to be made by you. Third thing you can do, come to me where we can all figure out how to make that change together. Because if one person has a problem, I guarantee you there's a million other people in the area that have the same problem. We've covered a lot of topics over the past 3 years, and we have a different topic every night of the week. 3 nights out of the week, we talk about how to improve your finances, and 3 nights out of the week, we help you improve your personal life. And on Sundays, we cover questions and comments about everything else under the sun that we haven't covered yet or that we already have covered. And I can just about guarantee you that there are so many things in life that we can cover that we just haven't covered at all, that eventually we'll get to it if we haven't gotten to it yet. So one of the things that I want to tell you is to make sure that you guys take the time to like the channel. Follow us if you're watching us on Twitter. Follow us if you're watching us on Twitch. Subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Hit those notification buttons on YouTube. We've got the show going as far out as 7 days. I want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to gain as much knowledge and information as you can to be as successful as possible. Remember, we're live 7 nights a week, and we don't let the sun rise without going live. And that has been a tradition for us. Even if we don't start on time, we always start every night of the week. So, what I want to say is thank you very much for coming to this and that. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I'm going to see you guys tomorrow night. And before I go, real quick, Monday is right around the corner. Make sure that if you're following our dividend rotation strategy, that you buy into International Seaway. And if you're not following our dividend rotation strategy, start looking into how to integrate your TikTok from the old international version to the US version, because that has begun this week. Thank you guys very much, and I'll see you.
Chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. Just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never yield.